Oh, you're just a delight, aren't you? I am gagged, cuffed, and living for that. Now that is very juicy. Welcome to Jordy's Juice. Hello everyone and welcome to our new podcast, Jordy's Juice. My name is Jordy Delight. I am the real housewife of Leaf, drag activist, DJ, actor, and all-round superstar. I am strong-willed, outspoken, and I will tell it like it is. I am the Oprah of drag. So buckle up, guys, girls, and non-binaries, because you are in for the ride of your lives. Our topic and conversations for this fabulous podcast will be all the LGBT community. No subjects will be off limits. It is a safe space for our souls to sing as free as a bird. In this first season, we are going to be talking all things drag. Now, you might already know that I'm a drag queen in Scotland, but I also have cystic fibrosis. I did a documentary called Jordy's 65 Reasons to Live with Solus Productions and the BBC, and ever since, my career has taken off. I've went from performing for nurses and hospitals to performing on some of the biggest stages in Scotland. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, also called me an icon for winning an award. Hell yeah, we also both wear heels and she's killing it and so am I. So there you go, folks. Anything with drag really is possible. In my first episode of Jordy's Juice, I get juicy and catch up with Ellie Diamond, the Diamond of Dundee's Scottish drag scene. I've known Ellie for a long time, back in the day when she used to message me asking for makeup tips, and let me tell you, I'll be going to her for makeup lessons after this episode. Like me, she's an East Coast queen coming up from the road in Dundee. You all know her for being the kind-hearted Scottish queen on RuPaul's Drag Race Season 2. She is, of course, charming, ultra-talented, and gorgeous. It was so good to catch up with her again, and this is all the juice on her drag journey and time on Drag Race spilled. Enjoy. Well, I'm so excited to get juicy with Ellie Diamond, the diva, the Diamond of Dundee. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so excited to be doing this, Ellie. Like, I have to be honest, like, I'm really good. I'm just so blown away. You know, last time I seen you would have been at Thank the Three Sisters, out of drag, both of us. So it's so interesting that I saw you on my TV every Thursday night.
Every other Thursday night, literally. Well, I know we've just not seen each other in ages, but Miss Rona's not really helped that, obviously, but yeah, I know.
Yeah, and it's honestly so great to have Jordy's Juice episode 1 with the absolute Diamond of Dundee. Like, I'm so excited for this. So, like, how are you feeling in the sort of aftermath of Drag Race Season 2? How's life been?
It's all just sort of like one thing at a time, and I'm never trying to be like, oh, let me look 3 weeks into the future and try to figure out what I'm going to do then. Let me just like figure out what I'm doing day by day by day, and then obviously just trying to do as much as I can to sort of keep the momentum going, because it was easy to like keep the momentum going during the show, because I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't have to get in drag this week to do any posts or whatever because I'm posting a look from next week. But then now it's like, well, there's no post to post from next week, so I'm just gonna have to like create everything and just keep going, because the fandom will lose interest very quickly as soon as another season comes out, which another one already has.
Yeah,
we've got Drag Race Down Under now, so it's like,
yeah,
it's like just keep it pushing, just keep pushing.
It's so interesting because it feels like Drag Race is everywhere now. I don't think I can go on TV without seeing drag everywhere. I absolutely am here for it though. It's such a great thing, because I remember obviously there was years ago. I remember this very briefly, but you had messaged me on Instagram, like Lawrence and all other drag queens at the time, saying, you know, oh, I will do drag, like, could you give some advice with makeup? And I remember saying to you, gal, I am not the person to come to for makeup advice. Go and message someone else. You know, tell me then, you know, one of the things I want to ask then for like Jordy's Juice, you know, for all our listeners is, what thing kind of got you into drag first, Ellie, if we go way back?
I mean, let's just be the generic drag queen of the 21st century and we'll say Drag Race, which, it was Drag Race. My first introduction to drag. Well, I think my first ever introduction to drag was watching Hairspray when I was younger. That's my favorite movie. And not the musical version, the Divine way back. That was the first movie that I remember watching, being like, oh, that's a man dressing as a woman doing drag, which was Divine. And then so Divine was my first sort of introduction to drag, but then actually to then know what it was and to understand it and to sort of want to do it myself was Drag Race. So I watched, it was season 6, episode 1, and I'd said it on the show, but like when Adore Delano walked in, I literally was just like, oh, what a loon. I was like, what a loon, just like so charismatic and just uniquely themselves. So I was just like, I would love to sort of not imitate, but I guess in some ways imitate, because my first ever time in drag was Adore Delano cosplay. So
was it?
Yeah, if you go on the Instagram and you scroll way back down, you'll see that Budweiser bodysuit and the red wig.
Yeah, because I remember one of the first looks I did in Electric Circus at Such a Drag years ago was a flannel shirt as a dress with a belt round it, like Adore Delano vibes. So I totally...
Yeah, well, she cultured that literally, like that was for a long time. It was the black bodysuit with like a nice belt from H&M or from Primark or whatever, and a flannel shirt and like a shake and go wig.
Yeah, I mean, you've said the trigger word H&M, by the way. Let's just clarify, H&M after season 2.
Hey, well, this is the thing, right, where Astina wore ASOS, Joe wore H&M, and then on the comedy challenge, I wore Quiz.
Quiz?
Yeah, that red sequin thing was Quiz, and no one clocked it, and I was like, well, I got away with that one.
I didn't even think Quiz was still a thing.
I love Quiz. Literally, when I used to like just do drag at Bingo Wigs every other week, I would go into Quiz, and because they would have they'd have like neoprene costumes, and that's my favorite sort of fabric is neoprene. I love a little bit of neoprene.
Love that.
And they would just have like nice floral prints, and I would just buy them all, cut them up, and like make them into something else.
Yeah, I mean, sequins is very apt for your drag. Shine bright like a diamond, Ellie Diamond. Where does that name come from? Tell me more about that name.
So when I was younger, I mean, my boy name is Elliot. So then when I was younger, everyone in my family or whatever, my brothers is Bryce and Logan, and they'd call Brycey, Logie, and then they'd always call me Ellie. Like they're that literally, not Ellie or L, but it'd be Ellie or L or L. I would just get called that. So I was like, I want to have that as my name, Ellie. I like the name anyway. So I was like, that's a nice name. And then Diamond comes from, oh my God, where did Diamond come from? Well, I had to start create a new story for the show because they were like, oh, that's a bit of a long story. So on the show, I was like, oh, Diamond, because Diamond's your God's best friend. Boo. But then my original thing was I wanted to be Ellie Ruby, like the Ruby Slippers from the Wizard of Oz. But Ruby's more of a first name. So I went, well, what else shines bright like a ruby with sparkles like a diamond? And I was like, oh, wait. I was like, I like Diamond. And then I said Ellie Diamond, and I put the two together, and I was like, oh, I actually kind of like that. And it just sort of stuck.
I love that. Like, I think your name flows off the tongue. Like, for me, like, Jordy comes from a Newcastle strip I used to wear as a kid. So I know that thing with the family nickname. That's what I got called growing up. So I totally relate to that. I feel as a drag artist in Scotland that the Dundee scene has been doing really well, actually, the last couple of years. But, what was it like for you at the beginning to sort of get gigs and stuff before you got on Drag Race? What was the Dundee scene like?
I mean, the Dundee scene, there was no drag shows in Dundee before I started doing drag. So I guess in some ways I did start the scene in Dundee. And I don't think a lot of people know that, which is kind of like, I'm not bothered, but it's like, whatever, girl. It's like, so when I first started doing drag, there was like a couple of drag queens, but there was no shows. It was just sort of like, oh, we do drag and we go out on the pish. And I was like, all right, okay. So we started hanging about together, and then we would like put on like little shows in like pubs or whatever, but God, they weren't paid, and it was like just a thing here and there. And then we all fell out, but then when I sort of just like practiced my makeup in my bedroom, that was like a big thing. I was just like a bedroom queen and just like doing my makeup, practicing that, wigs, costumes. And then the venue church which is now Church Dundee, Bingo Wigs, which is like known and everything like that. They just messaged me randomly, being like, hey, we've got a new club in Dundee called Church, and we're thinking of doing like a bingo drag show every week. Would you love to come and host a show? And I was like, had never played bingo, had never hosted a show. And I was like, yeah, I know everything about bingo. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then the first show I'd done was a disaster, but there was only like 2 people there. So it was fine. And then I just sort of like grew the show from that point on and made it to what it is today. And there's been not so many residents, but there's been a lot of residents who had came and gone, and now there's 2 more that have just came in and filled the slot, the bingo hole.
The thing is, like, I'm not surprised that you started the scene in Dundee in a way. I can see that, actually, and you getting on Drag Race, of course, representing Dundee. It's funny because when I hear this thing about going into pubs and stuff and doing like shows, like that's what me and Amy Lamore used to do before we started doing drag shows, like just go to Planet karaoke on a Friday, dancing to YMCA.
I remember seeing the old videos way back when.
Oh God, I hope they can get deleted if I get on Drag Race in the future. It's so interesting. What was it like then, obviously, growing up in Dundee in general? Because I'm not from Dundee and I've never been through there. What was it like growing up there as someone that's from the queer community and wanting to be sort of effeminate and do drag? What was that like, for you?
I mean, there really was no... I mean, from my point of view, in my perspective, there really was no other visibly queer people in Dundee that I was able to like walk down the street and be like, oh, that's a gay person. Do you know what I mean? Like I would walk down the street in a camouflage jacket, a UV green backpack with like load of patches all over this jacket, hair platinum silver, eyebrows chunkier than caterpillars, foundation, pink lipstick, lashes. Like it was way back when it was gay. And I was really only the first person that sort of looked like that in Dundee from what people have said to me recently. And they've been like, oh, I remember you. One of my friends who I'm really close with now, and I didn't know them back then. They were like, oh, I remember seeing you about Dundee and just being like, oh my God, like what sort of character is that? Who, like, what crazy lunatic looks like that? And I was like, well, girl, me, who else? Do you know what I mean? But no, within Dundee, I mean, like, yeah, I kind of was the first queen to break that thing in Dundee and sort of create something in Dundee. So in some ways it was hard because there was a lot of pressure there, but then I don't know, it just sort of, the pressure sort of built it up, and it didn't really end well in the end. But, we took a year, we went away, we kind of sorted things out a little bit more, came back, was just sort of like, hey, here's how I've changed, here's how things have resolved in this last year. And everything's like kind of not back to normal, but like we're on a good path with the scene.
Oh, I'm so glad. And the thing is with like family, especially growing up, I was lucky that I had quite a supportive family, being a member of the queer community. Like my mum is great, my brother's great. You mentioned on the show obviously about your brother Bryce, and I'd love to hear more about what it was like for him when you sort of told him you wanted to do drag. Was he really supportive?
I mean, it was never really like, oh, I want to do drag, I'm going to do drag. Like, I just done it. And like, there wasn't really much stopping me. Like, I remember just like, when I started watching Drag Race, I was like, I need to start doing this. And I didn't buy makeup. But you know what I done? I went to my Auntie Karen's house and I was like, oh, have you still got all your face paint? And she was like, yeah. I took all her face paints. I used the white, the brown, the black, and the blue, and the red, and I created a drag look with the face paints. And I thought I was the one doing the highlighting, the contour, and thinking I was going to be able to blend out, but it didn't really blend out because it's face paint. But yeah, I used to use face paint when I did my makeup, just like in my bedroom, like practicing crap, literally practicing crap. But no, I mean, he was really, really supportive from the jump. There was nothing really that ever was like he was worried about or whatnot. He was just very quite protective because he knew that it was like a thing that you could get bullied for or stuff. And like I started doing drag when I was in school, and there was a lot of people in school that would say stuff, and like I'd done these, like I used to do like YouTube videos as well, like way back in the day. They're all privatized now, so you'll never find them, which is a good thing. but yeah, I would get teased for that a lot, and he would always try to stick up for me and stuff like that. So he was really supportive. I also have another brother, Logan, an older brother by 3 years, and he's supportive, but he's supportive now, and he understands it because his friends are like, oh, Ellie's a drag race queen, a celebrity, blah 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 blah. Also, I hate that term, but that's what people call it, so that's what it is. And they're like, oh, so he kind of accepts it now, and he thinks yeah, it's cool, the transformation. He recognizes how much effort and work that I put into it, so he just sort of is like, well, I'm not going to shun you from how much you put into this,
We stand supportive family, and if either of your brothers are single, I am single, so please let them know that I'm still available.
Girl, they're both straight, but I'm gay, I'm single, so par.
Oh, okay, future drag couple, why not?
Oh my goodness.
It's so interesting. So we're going to get on to Drag Race UK a bit more, actually. One of the things that was really refreshing...
Wait, what's that?
Oh, yeah. What is Drag Race UK? One of the refreshing things I felt, which I couldn't connect with, but I'd love to ask you about if you wouldn't mind sharing, was the fact that, you had a bit of a struggle with your dad that you openly talked about on the show that I actually got really emotional watching. And I just would like to ask, what was it like talking about that on the show? Was that quite a sort of raw feeling? And what was it like in the aftermath? Are you and your dad quite close now about the drag stuff, or have things been a bit up and down?
Yeah. I mean, I knew when there's several things you have to go through before you actually get on the show. And one of the biggest things that I had spoke about in something that we had to do was my dad's sort of mentally, physically, and abusive relationship that we've had together. And it was all sort of, I didn't really speak a lot on the show about the ins and outs of everything, because I was also kind of respectful, being like, well, I don't want to share everything, because then I'm not sure like what his sort of backlash would get from it, or if friends for him like who are watching the show being like, oh, Dave, I never knew that you done that to Ellie or X, Y, and Z. But like, great. Anyways, when I was on the show, it was never, because that's the thing a lot as well. People always go, oh, are those bits scripted, or is that bit scripted? None of it was like scripted. It was more just like in the moment, me and Taste were just talking about family, and she was like, oh yeah, I've got really supportive parents. And I was like, well, girl, I wish I had that. And like, that's those times where if you don't take that moment to talk about your experiences, then you don't know when another chance is going to come in to do that. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to speak about this because I don't know if that's going to help someone in their sort of, if they're watching at home or whatever, because it can, like when I watch the show or whatever, I've connected with sometimes where the queens have been like, oh yeah, I've had conversion therapy or X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. You connect with the thing because it's true. So when I spoke about it on the show, I was quite respectful to not obviously say too much, but it was just a thing where I was like, I want to say this because it's something that happened to me. It was a huge part of my life, but it's made me the person that I am today. And like I'm a huge strong believer in everything happens for a reason. So like, even if you're going through a horrible experience and something really traumatic is happening in your life, just like always know that either that relationship or that friendship that you have will either go away and it'll be forgotten about and you'll never have to deal with it again, or you will both come out of it as stronger people and will respect and love each other more because of that. And me and my dad we've spoke. I told him that I was obviously on the show before I was allowed to tell anyone. But anyways, I told him, and he cried. He got quite emotional because he knew it's something that I really, really wanted, and like that it was a goal for mine for so long to like make a name for myself. We've spoke a lot since the show. We didn't really speak much after that episode. We actually haven't spoke about that episode since. Well, we haven't spoke about that episode at all, but I'm sure he understands where I was coming from, and like none of it was false. So he can't really be like, well, you don't say that because that didn't happen. Everything happened and what I was said was true. So yeah, but no, we're fine. Like we're just kind of like working on a relationship and just trying to build something together, which was built up before I was broken down, so we kind of need to build the wall back up.
Oh, and I found it inspiring because when I watched it, these were things that I didn't know about you that I went, oh my God, Ellie, like I want to give you a hug now. That's so like brave of you to talk about that on television. And in terms of obviously the sort of scene, when I seen that it was you and Lawrence, I thought, I'm so happy, especially for you, that Dundee was getting that representation, because, you know, there is that lens of thinking that people would go Scottish drag scene, Glasgow and Edinburgh, but I'm so glad that Dundee got the representation from the Diamond of Dundee. Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. And in contrast with your dad, you obviously had mentioned you've got quite a good relationship with your mum, and I've seen Instagram videos of your mum that I just think she seems like an absolute hoot. You know, was she obviously so pleased for you making top 4?
Oh yeah, I mean, when we went to Manchester to film The Crowning, and I brought my mum along with me for that, and the entire weekend she was just in awe of the lifestyle, because she's never met anybody like Bimini, and she was like, I love Bimini. She's like, oh, I think Bimini's great, and she got to meet Bimini's mum, Tace's mum. She obviously met Tace, and she went, oh, Tace is a riot, which is Tace says she's crazy. But like, you know, she was so proud. I mean, like, as any mum would be for even just getting on the show. Like, she was just like always so proud of me for that, and she's always just sort of kept that momentum of pride with her, which is really, really sweet. Like, anytime anyone ever says anything, she's like, "Oh, that's my son. Well, you know, that's my son. Does all that." She works in a card and gift company, and like all the little old ladies come in and they're like, oh, I was seeing your son on the TV the other week. And so they've been, all the little old ladies in the ferry were watching Drag Race, and they would come into my mum's shop on the Friday and be like, oh, done well last week, didn't you? And they'd have, it's cute.
That is honestly so cute. And I think that impact is amazing, because I know there'll be people in Dundee that maybe would never think that people like that would be talking about Drag Race and a drag queen, let alone you,
Literally.
Your mum's child. It's absolutely brilliant. So let's get on to Drag Race. Something that I think a lot of us maybe would like to know about you and sort of Drag Race is, what was the audition process like, and the overall, so you've mentioned it briefly, but what was it like going through all the audition process and then finding out that, you know, phone call or email that you got on?
Yeah. Well, I was at DragCon. It was DragCon weekend in London. And I was there, and I was like, I'm going to turn in and turn up for this. So I like just tried to pull, because it was like literally like 3 weeks before was Drag World. So I spent so much money at Drag World, getting costumes, getting hair, getting shoes. And then they announced DragCon. I was like, oh, I have no money. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I literally just like pulled crap together and like tried to create something. But no, so it was DragCon weekend, and I was flying back from London, and I literally just landed in Glasgow, and I was already like, I was like so tired, so I was like, I'm just going to get myself a hotel in Glasgow, maybe see some dolls, and then I'm going to head back the next day. And then I like landed in Glasgow, and it was like from Glasgow, when I landed in the Uber to the hotel, I got a phone call from one of the producers, and they were like, hey, Ellie, we just want to let you know that you've made it to the next stage. And I was like, okay. I was like, what does that mean? And he was like, so you're going to get an evaluation or whatever. We're just going to have to give you a quick phone call, basically, take a day off, and we're just going to discuss with you basically your entire life. Because by this point, we had already done like a written form or whatever of like, hey, this is my drag, my name, how old I am, blah, 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 where I'm from. And then the next thing after that is an audition tape. And everything was already done. So the audition tape was done, and that was sent off. But that was like, you have to just put everything into like, it's 10 minutes that you've got. So you have to put everything within 10 minutes. And there's so much. It's like an acting, snatch game, runways, a Q&A portion, a lip sync, all within 10 minutes. And I remember just sitting there like trying to like whittle everything down and just trying to be like, oh my goodness, like we need to cut a tiny section a bit of that, like there needs to be that tiny space, that 1 second gap, we just need to knock that off a second. So it was quite a process doing the audition tape, but I was also working at the same time, so I would like finish night shift, come home, put makeup on, film the tape, go to bed, wake up, go to work, come home, film a bit of the tape, literally. So it was a long process. But then so we had it was like a psych evaluation, basically. They just basically make sure that you're mentally stable to go on a reality TV show, which, as all TV shows do, I'm pretty sure anyways. So it was like a full day, and it was like 11 o'clock until 7, and I just sort of sat, and they were like, okay, start from the beginning. And I just sort of had to start from the beginning of my life. What school was like when I was younger, growing up in Dundee when I was younger, moving to America. I moved to America, what that sort of experience was like. How was your relationship with your dad when you lived in America? And, you're a Christian and you were born Christian, blah blah blah. You went to a Christian school, you got kicked out of a Christian school. Like, what sort of the ins and outs of everything they got to discuss. So that was a long day, but it was a good day.
Amazing. And what was it like, when you found out you'd go on the show then after doing all that work and those night shifts and working? What was it like?
Well, I actually was coming home from a night shift and I had just got in. I think it was like 8 o'clock I got the call, and I was sitting in the toilet, I was having a poo, and I got a text being like, "Hi, it's a producer from Drag Race, would love to call you in 5 minutes." And I literally was like, I literally texted back, I was like, "Yeah, cool, that's fine, just call whenever." Jumped up, wiped, ran through to my mum's room, like shook her to wake her up, because I was like, "You need to wake up." I was like, "I'm about to get the call." I was like, "I either got it or I don't." So she sat in the living room and she was so excited. She was excited. I put it on speaker and our producer answered like, "Hey Ellie, just want to ask, is anyone else around you?" And I was like, no. I was like, "No, it's just me in my bedroom," because I didn't know if they also wanted me to or not. And he was like, "Well, just want to let you know, congratulations, you've made it on RuPaul's Drag Race UK season 2. And he's American. And I literally just remember, because I do not know why, but for some reason I didn't get excited. Like, I wasn't like screaming, I wasn't jumping up, I wasn't like, "Whoa, oh my God, thank you." I wasn't like that. I literally sat so quiet. And he was like, "Are you still there?" And I was like, yeah, I'm still there. He was like, "Oh, you don't seem very excited." I was like, "Oh no, sorry." I was like, I am. I'm just sort of like, I was like, it's just sort of like all a lot. And I was like, wait, the first thing I said, I was like, "Oh, when do we get told what runways it is?" because I was like, "Girl, I've one, not got money. 2, we have no time to get ready for this bloody show. And I'm still working. So I'm like, I need to know these runways ASAP so I can get them done." And he was like, "Oh, you'll get everything sent out tonight." So that night I got everything sent out. Fair enough. Went through everything, FaceTimed Anne, and was just sort of Anne's friend from Dundee. I mean, you know Anne, but for the viewers. And then I sat with Anne on FaceTime, got my notebook out and literally sketched everything for every single runway that night. And then the next morning went to the fabric shop and was like, "Hi, I need like a lot of fabric, but I have no money to pay for it. Would you mind if I took a tab of like £300 maybe?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine."
Wow.
And I was like, "My God," because I'd gone in that fabric shop in Dundee, Zenova Fabrics. Oh, I'll go there for the rest of my life. It's fabulous. But when I used to do bingo wigs, obviously I used to get money after the show, but not before the show. But I would still need a new costume for that next week. So I would go and be like, "Hey, I get paid on the Tuesday, sorry. I'll come on a Wednesday and pay my tab." So I used to take tabs quite a lot in Dundee, but in the fabric shop. But he was really fine with that because he was like, "Oh, I trust you. You come in and pay it, so it's fine." So when I went in being like, I need like a lot of fabric," he was like, "Yeah, of course, that's fine, just as long as you can pay it." And then obviously Miss Rona happened, and I couldn't pay it. So I've like only just paid it off like maybe about 4 months ago.
Do you know what? It's so interesting though, because watching the show, I'm not surprised the first thing you asked was about the runways, because you killed it every week on the runway. Do you know that? But one thing that really struck with me was that bird look. I mean, where do you get the ideas for these things? You're so talented that way. Share with me some sort of ideas. Like, where do you get the creative inspiration for these looks?
Yeah. I love like everything sort of like crazy and whimsical. Like, I love Dr. Seuss. I used to read the Dr. Seuss books a lot when I was younger. And I love films like The Wizard of Oz, The Cat in the Hat. Well, Cat in the Hat's obviously Dr. Seuss, but sort of Alice in Wonderland, like movies like that just sort of like bring you back to something that's like recognizable and is unique to look at, I guess, in some ways. Like, you can recognize The Wizard of Oz because of the set, or the Yellow Brick Road, or the ruby slippers, or the gingham dress, or like Tin Man, Lion, Scarecrow. Like, I want you to look at me and recognize me for like the big shapes, bright colors, unique and quirky sort of drag and stuff. So when I was doing the looks, the seagull, I just remember being like, I was like, day at the seaside. I was like, right, what's at the seaside? Ice cream. I was like, I could do ice cream. I originally wanted to do this ice cream dress that had like cones all over me, like dripping ice cream or whatever, but it would have just been too technical to figure out. So I was just like, and at the time, my sewing skills weren't like as good. It was a bodysuit and chaps and a little circle skirt. So that's just what I kind of had to do. And for the seagull, I literally was just like, well, I'm just going to do a seagull. I was like, well, what else? I was like, of course I'm going to do a seagull. And I've done like animal creative like looks like that before, like where I've done like a tiger, or I've done just like weird paints or whatever. I've done that before. So I was like, yeah, I'll do a seagull, and that's diversity, something new for that moment. But the first time I went, I didn't have the polka dot bikini. And then when I was away, I was obviously during the pandemic, I kind of went through all my runways. I didn't change anything. All my costumes were still the same. I just maybe added a couple more rhinestones or this, that, and the next thing, changed up the wigs or whatever. But for the seagull, I was like, how can I update a seagull look? Because I was like, I can't. And at the time, I didn't think of feathers. I'm even going to put a couple feathers on it, but at the time, I didn't think of feathers. And I didn't think of it, and then my mum a couple of days later, we were just like out or whatever, and she started humming the "It's a Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini," and I was like, oh my god, I was like, wait, that would be great if I came out as a seagull, sort of like beauty pageant, Miss Seagull 2019 or 2020 or something like that. And that's kind of the idea I went around it. But then I scrapped the pageant thing and just sort of went with the bikini. But I kind of wish I'd done the pageant thing because that would have been really funny. But yeah, the polka dot bikini was an afterthought since the pandemic happened.
I love that. It's so Miss Congeniality meets Brighton Pure. Like, I love it. Like, I'm here for it. It's interesting, actually. So one of the things you've said a lot, obviously, was the pandemic. And I think that one of the things I really got annoyed about was the amount of people, because you know what social media can be like, it can be so toxic. The amount of people that were being quite critical of the show every week. And I was thinking to myself, these gals have filmed this during a pandemic. You really need to be a bit more respectful. What was it like filming the first couple of episodes and then the pandemic hit? Because we obviously saw on the show, you all getting told you're not safe, you need to go home. And it very much was like being evacuated. You know, what was it like filming this show over 2 parts and doing it during a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first 4 episodes when we were there, when I woke up in the hotel in the morning, I would always just turn the TV on and just watch the news for a little bit, and then I'd go get a shower and get myself ready. But I'd leave the news running, so I knew that there was something going on, and I knew that there was going to be like this a thing, because like every other week it was like, well, every other day it was like, oh, you missed COVID, blah 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 blah, more deaths, da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh my god, this is getting a bit serious. And when we get on the bus, it would be like, everybody would be like, vibes, there's more deaths happening in London and da, 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 and everything's going on. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then it was that last day we were there, Jenny got ill. And Jenny wasn't feeling too well, so she had sat out a lot of times. And then it was sort of the obviously Jenny had then walked off. And then we came back into the workroom, and obviously we were doing our thing, chatting on the sofa, well, arguing on the sofa. And then the RuPaul thing went off. When we filmed it, there was no RuPaul there being like, oh, a pandemic, because she obviously hadn't filmed that or whatever. So we just watched a blank screen for like 5 seconds. And then all the cameramen left, all the crew left instantly. A producer came in and says, hey guys, hey queens, y'all need to get out of drag ASAP. We're not going to tell you why right now. Just get out of drag and sit on the sofas, and we'll all discuss it later. So fair enough, we did. And obviously our microphones were off by this point. There was nobody in the room. So we just started chatting, and they were like, someone's coming back. And I went, no one's coming back. I went, girl, we're all going home. And they were like, what? And I was like, the pandemic is. I was like, we are definitely all going home. No one's coming back because they would want a reaction for that. I was like, we're going home. And then I just remember Hora getting a bit upset, not wanting to go, obviously. And I was like, we don't know that yet, but I think that's what's going to happen. Fair enough. We all sit on the sofas and we all sit down, and all the, like, literally everybody, the entire crew came into the room. And at the time, I was thinking like, well, what's going on? Looking back, I'm like, maybe there shouldn't have been that many people in that room, but there was a lot of people in the room. And all the producers, everyone, the head from BBC, everyone was there. And it's like, they just started like, they were like, we just want to thank you so much for like, what you guys have been doing so far. Like, it's been great, but unfortunately, we're going to have to guys send you home because of COVID. Like, the pandemic has hit. They were like, when you go back home, there's not going to be any shows. There's no bars or whatever. Because we were all like, oh, well, you know, we'll just go back to work. And they were like, yeah, no, not happening. Like, I'm not sure if you've watched the news, but whatever, like, you know, nothing is going to get open. Like, we're literally going into a lockdown pandemic thing. I started getting really emotional because I was kind of drunk already, and they also gave us more alcohol. So I was like kind of drunk, so I started crying. Just because I was like, I cry for everything. Just started crying, and then I was just like, I just want to thank you guys as well, because they kept thanking us, and I was like, no one thanking them, so I thanked them. And then everyone else started crying as well because it was quite real. And then they were like, so what's going to happen from this point on is we've all got you cars to send you home tomorrow. So literally, by this point, it was like 12 o'clock at night, and they were like, you need to pack up tonight. So we like had to pack up everything that night. Like, obviously had just gotten out with drag, and they were like, yeah, you guys need to pack up. They brought all the suitcases back in, and then like, I just remember like everyone like wondering about, like being like, oh, I was going to wear this for this runway, because we didn't know what was going to happen. Like, we didn't know if it was going to be 2 weeks, 3 minutes, a month, 2 months, well, 7 months later. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just didn't know. So we all just started sharing what we were going to wear and stuff like that, and just wandering about. And it was quite sad, because we like, I remember Lawrence just being like, I don't think we're going to come back. And I was like, well, if we don't come back, you're the winner, because you won the last repeater badge. And she was like, actually, babes, yeah, that's fine. So, but then, well, turns out 7 months later, then she did win. But no, it was horrible. And then obviously got in the car, got home, well, got my phone, got in the car, and then 2 minutes in the car journey, Michelle Visage done leaked half the cast, didn't she?
Yeah, via Nando's on Instagram, wasn't it?
The Nando's order, girl, literally. And I remember that Nando's, because that was that Nando's that we had the last night when we were there. I remember the Nando's, and it was cold. It was a cold, it was a horribly cold Nando's, and I didn't finish my note because it was cold. And I was like, girl, why are you going to be, oh, thanks, Nando's, when it was cold, bone to the bone cold. But anyways, we live and we learn, and I'm sure she's learned from that mistake, girl, because BBC would have been on her ass.
It was so funny seeing that. I did think I could see you, but, you know, I've got bad vision, so, you know, maybe it was just me seeing things. Maybe I was predicting it, but I'm so glad that you did go on. And so many moments in that show, Ellie, watching it, that I thought were incredible. Like, you doing the steps lip sync is still one of my favourite moments from that show. One of my favourite songs. And, you know, one of the things I want to ask that's probably a bit controversial that you've maybe heard a lot is, do you still stand by that infamous decision with the running order that caused a bit of drama on the show?
Yes, I do. And in the moment, this wasn't caught on camera, but like a lot more things were said off camera between me and someone else. And that sort of got me a bit upset, because it got me upset. So I went away to a producer and I went, can we please refilm that? I was like, I do not want this getting aired. And I literally started bawling my eyes out and like hyperventilating. Probably had a bit of a panic attack, to be honest. And I was like, we need to refilm that. And he was like, yeah, we can't refilm that. Like, RuPaul's like left the room or whatever. Like, the cameras are turned off or whatever. We're not going to refilm it. And I just remember like bawling my eyes out. And at the same time as well, I just was on the phone to my mum, which was a completely other thing, where my granddad or whatever was admitted to the hospital. So I was already emotional at that point. And then, yeah, so the whole running order thing, it just sort of got me really, really, really upset in the moment. But then kind of like, after the show had aired and after all of that obviously happened, I was like, okay, that kind of went the way that I didn't expect it to go. I thought they were going to villainize me, but they actually villainized the other two, so I was kind of fine with that. I was like, well, okay, that's fine. But then when we were there as well, the Rue and Michelle podcast, when I went to go speak to them for that, they were like, oh, have you got a question you're going to ask RuPaul or whatever? And I was like, I don't really know. But then they asked me what was my lowest point. And for the cameras and for them to sort of give me the validation, I went, oh, the running order. That was not my lowest. That wasn't a lowest low at all. I don't really think I had a lowest low during the show. That rhymed, Dr. Seuss the House. But I said that for them, because I knew what their answer was going to be. So that's why I said that, because I was like, the people at home, if I did get villainized for it, then the people at home would be like, okay, it's fine then, because Rue Michelle said it's fine. And then also when Lawrence and Ahura watch the show back, they'll be like, oh, well, Ahura, what's her name? RuPaul and Michelle said it was fine, so therefore it must be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching it thinking, gals, it's a competition. It's not,
literally.
It's like Ru says, it's not RuPaul's best friend race. Do you know what I mean? It's not. So I think it's really interesting. I didn't think what you did was wrong at all, actually. I thought it was quite clever, and I thought each week I really was gunning for you. You were my secret winner. Like, I really wanted you to do well and win, because I thought you hadn't had your complete moment yet. Every week I thought you were doing incredible looks, you were turning it out. And I remember Wizard of Oz look especially. I know that you love Wizard of Oz. It was just when I saw you do steps one, I thought, nah, she's going to have to win this. She's going to bring it home to Scotland, but to Dundee, and give Dundee that platform. But you did incredible. Top 4. I mean, what was that like? You must have been so cheesing. Picturing you years ago messaging people like, oh, I want to drag, but I'm not too sure. What does it feel like now to know that you were top 4 on season 2 of Drag Race UK?
I mean, it just feels correct. I'm joking, but it's like, it's yeah, in some ways, I guess, no, it does kind of feel correct, because it's like, within Dundee especially, I'm just with sort of the entire scene, I've worked so hard, and that's the thing where everyone works hard. I'm not discrediting anybody, but it's like, I just feel like I've had to showcase a lot more and prove a lot more, because I was very, very new into the scene, and I think a lot of the times folk thought I was cocky or big-headed because I was like, oh no, I can sew, and I can do wigs and stuff like that, and I'm a good performer. But I kind of just had to showcase that a lot more, because they were like, oh, well, you're a young one, so X, Y, and Z. And no one, I guess, someone asked me the other night, that says, oh, what's something you've learned coming off the show? And I didn't have a straight up answer, but I thought about it, and I was like, I've learned to sort of accept the talents I have, because a lot of times people wouldn't say, oh, you're so talented at sewing, you're so talented at this. But then during Drag Race, that's all that people said. It was always your makeup and your hair and your costumes. It was really, really validating hearing that, because I didn't really hear that before, from like peers that I respected and like looked upon as like wanting validation from within the local scene. So yeah, I guess it was. And then top 4, it was just sort of a full circle moment where I was like, there really was no words, and I'm still kind of tongue tied to the full extent of it, because it's just sort of like, I just didn't expect it. Like, going on the show, I didn't expect to get the sort of reaction that I did from RuPaul with what the costume, hair, and makeup. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, it was just like, everyone does drag, and well, not everyone does drag, but like within the drag scene, everyone does drag, and everyone has their own drag. And it was never the fact where I'd seen myself like, as the makeup girl, or as this or as that. But then when we were there, they sort of had to. It was sort of a thing where they were like, "Oh no, you are like, you're really talented, and you're so young. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's insane." And I never thought of it like as that. But I don't like to think of that as that, because then you could get into your own head and everything. You become the diva that everyone thinks that people are going to become after Drag Race, and it's just I've got too many friends around me to not become a bitch. Do you know what I mean? Like, girl, I get humbled by Anne every other minute.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. And, considering the fact that, considering on the show, you were literally told, like, you've got one of the most beautiful mugs compared to, like, someone like Raven. Like, that must have felt incredible to know that you were considered that incredible.
It's insane, like the sort of fandom and everything. Like, I've seen Reddit things, I've seen like Instagram stuff or YouTube, and it's like best makeup queens on Drag Race, and it's like people that I've looked up to for years that I'm on the same category as them, which is so weird. It's just so weird to think of. Like, I'm literally just sitting here, like, it's crazy to think that people look at that as the same. Because for me, I'm like, well, I'm just putting makeup on and I'm whacking the slap together, hoping for the best and hoping it works.
Brilliant. And it all started from face paint. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that
Quite
incredible?
literally. I mean, we do. We paint our faces. We paint our faces. I think if I were to ever do makeup palette, I might call it face paint.
I love that, Ellie's face paint. But the last question I want to ask you, Ellie, what's the plan now? You've done Drag Race Season 2, is All Stars UK 1 going to be on your agenda? You went from the drive-through in McDonald's to now doing this Scottish drag-through gig that's been going on in Scotland. What's the plan now?
I mean, what isn't the plan? There's so many things that I want to do with this platform, and there's so many things that need to be done, because that's the thing as well, where a lot of times folk go on the show and then they get modelling agencies and they get TV appearances and a couple of performances, and then there's no voice there. It's just sort of the queen. And that's the thing where it's like, I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of people that maybe aren't as well known or aren't as big to have a voice that people will listen to. So it's my responsibility and my job to be that person. And as someone who is like very much like, I'm like surrounded by women my entire upbringing of drag, and as well as like now, like my best friends, whatever, it's like Auburn Rose and Anne are like two of my best friends. So it's like women are a huge part of a passion of drag for mine, because that's who I've learned my, not drag from, but my sort of sense of being and being respectful and like what are the words, like just being kind. I learned that from women, and having a bit more love and respect for people, learned that from women. So it's now my responsibility to carry that and to take that on and do with that knowledge I have and put that forward more into the world, and then the world will be a much better place. But I mean, performances, coming from the show, I had never performed outside of Scotland. I performed once and I was at DragCon, but I was already going, Drag World, sorry, but I was already going to this, so it wasn't like someone had booked me going out of Scotland. So I was like, I want to perform, I want to go everywhere, and I want to do all these cities, see all the people, meet all the people that I have known on Instagram for years, but I've never met them in person because I've never had the chance to, nor the money or resources to just go down north for the weekend or whatever. So I've been doing that. So the drive-time drag shows have been very, very fun. And the drive-time drag shows, I'm not sure when this podcast is getting released, but there still might be tickets for the Glasgow dates. Not entirely sure, but the Parking Lot Social on all social media platforms, and you'll find it all there.
And you've announced that you and Lawrence are doing something as well, I've seen this week.
Yes, Ochai the Tour. I came up with that name because originally the name was Team Scotland, and I was like, well, there's no teams anymore because Lawrence won, and I was like, I didn't. So I was like, we came up with a different name. So I phoned Lawrence and I was like, what's like a good name? And we couldn't think of anything. And I just sort of went, what about Ochai the Tour? And she was like, oh, I love it. She was like, oh, I love it. So Ochai the Tour in July, starting the 19th in Dundee, and then the 20th, 21st, 23rd is like Aberdeen, Edinburgh, and Glasgow. So we're hitting up Scotland.
Amazing. I can't wait for it. Ellie Diamond, thank you so much for joining me and getting juicy with Jordy. It's been an absolute delight.
Oh, thank you. I've loved getting juicy.
Thanks again to the super creative and lovely Diamond of Dundee, Ellie Diamond. And a big thank you to all my darlings for listening to the very first Jordy's Juice podcast. There's loads more juice where that came from, and you'll soon be able to find future episodes on Acast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast was produced by Solus Productions. See you real soon.